Mr. Fratscher, our panel has been named Germany as an accelerator towards an EU powerhouse. Well, last year the Economist asked if Germany was the sick man of Europe again, not the accelerator. Our economy is still growing very slowly, if at all. What can Germany contribute? Or, first of all, what does Europe actually need, in your opinion, to stay a powerhouse in this tense global situation?
Maybe 3 points. The first one is very short term. I don't think Germany is a sick man of Europe. Germany has had a very successful decade of the 2010s, has maximum employment. We have never had more people in jobs today than today. So in the short term, I would say we should not focus just on all the shortcomings and all the problems, but also look at the strength, look at the assets we have. That's a short answer to the first point. The second is for me that Germany needs to engage more with Europe. I'm really worried that looking at the last 10 years, not just the last 2 years, Germany has partly disengaged from Europe. It's not pushing ahead on the reform agenda. And if you look at, from an economic point of view, all big challenges that we have today, Germany itself is far too small to solve any of them. If you look at technology, scale economies, if you look at digital platforms, if you look at pharmaceuticals, at many other areas, they're really about tapping the European or global market. So in other words, looking at industrial policy, I think it's misguided to talk about German champions. There are, in the future, no German champions. They're either European champions or they're no champions. So to understand in terms of competition policy, we need to strengthen the single market, not weaken it, which Germany has done implicitly and explicitly with the many exemptions on state aid rules, very uneven competition within Europe. Second, on industrial policy, very much a national focus rather than a European focus. I think that's a mistake, and we need urgently to deepen the single market. And that's the greatest strength from an economic point of view. And yes, for goods, the single market is fairly complete, but if you look at services, it's very fragmented. Capital markets union, banking union are two big priorities. A lot when we talk about innovation is about funding innovation, new ideas, new companies, and there the US, but also China, other economies are far ahead of us to make funding available. So I think we can discuss more in detail later on. That's the second priority. And the third one, to me, is a different mindset that we need in Germany towards transformation. At the moment, what we're trying to do is we try to go back to 2018 or 2019, to the pre-crisis, say we want that back, but we won't be able to have that. So embrace transformation and really try to tap the potentials we have. And in economics, there is a saying, or was an economist, Richard Florida, that said, what makes an economy innovative, successful are 3 T's: technology, talents, and tolerance. And I think Germany, particularly on the tolerance side, could improve a lot by appreciating the diversity. Women employment is one, migration is another. So if you look at innovative ideas, if you look at new companies, at innovators, we had pharmaceuticals before, if you look at biotech as just one of the many examples, it's really about people. And we need to open up, be more appreciative of the diversity. I think that's one of the key strengths we have in Europe. And we're not using that enough. That has also to do with the risk attitude, to encourage people to say, take risk, we need new ideas. Failing is part of the business. We have a tax system, just as one example, that punishes equity capital over debt, over other forms of capital, just one example. And so I think we need to have a different attitude towards transformation, tap the potential we have, and these are first and foremost the people.
That was a lot. Thank you so much. That was no critics. That was a lot, but some of these challenges are not exactly new, but have been discussed for many years, like deepening the single market, make cross-border financing easier, and so on. I remember studying during the 1990s, and we already discussed that there. So why doesn't that happen, actually? Can you explain that?
I think so far Germany, and decision makers in business, but also in politics, had the attitude we can cope as a nation state. We can manage to be successful, and by and large, that's true. So the German economic model is based on openness. Almost half of our GDP, of our production, are exports. And we have lots of hidden champions, mid-sized companies. But we are living in a completely different world today. First, geopolitically, the geoeconomics, with China and the US becoming a lot more affirmative, a lot more nationalistic, if you wish. I think people are not thinking what a second Donald Trump term in the US could do to Europe and to Germany. And we need to understand, if Germany wants to protect its own interests in the future, it will only be able to do so as part of a united Europe with a strong single market where more decision-making is taking place in Brussels, as much as some people in Germany hate that, but that's the only way forward. So I think we are in a different world. And my answer to your question is, so far it has worked well, but it will not in the future. And I think it is not now. I think we are really realizing that already now with the war that's happening in the Ukraine, with China becoming a lot more assertive. So I think we have no other choice.
So we cannot longer just talk about it. We really have to do it now. That's would be your suggestion. Thank you so much. And now I would like to open this panel. And thank you. And please give a very warm welcome now to Kevin Peters, Senior Vice President of MSD Germany Human Health, and Sonja Pira, Country Manager at Intel Germany. Well, you two are representing two very innovative sectors here on the stage, the pharmaceutical industry and the IT industry. My first question would be to you, Sonja. When we talked about innovation during the last years, we have been talking a lot about data. Data is the new oil, it was said. Well, at the moment, it looks more like hardware is running out and that chips are the new oil and the prerequisite for all data-driven digital business models. As a result of that, Germany is subsidizing the new Intel site in Magdeburg with 9 billion euros. Mrs. Pira, was it just simply the best deal you could get in Europe, or is there more to be said for Germany as an investment location for innovation? Oh, you have two micros now. That's
just got it as it is not working. Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, thank you for the question. And obviously, yeah, it is. Intel was choosing Germany and Europe as a location to have the investment here for a real balanced global supply chain. And we need to think very much bigger on that topic. Yeah, it's about a new industry which we need to get over to Europe again, as well as to the US. At the moment, we see that semiconductor production is 20% in the Western Hemisphere, so in US and Germany, and 80% is in the Asia area. So we are very dependent. And this is all about that we want to balance this global supply chain again, and this means we are appreciating that we have the EU Chips Act as well as the US Chips Act, because this is at the moment helping us to invest in these areas. And Intel is investing in both regions. In Europe, it is about Germany, but also Poland, as well as in Ireland and in Israel. So this means we are really investing in Europe, as you were saying. We are not as a single country anymore. We need to really think very European in this space. And the EU Chips Act is saying that we would like to have 20% of the global supply chain from semiconductors over in Europe again. So this is, we are doubling that from, at the moment, 9% to 20% in 2030, and this is what we are trying to do. And it's not only about Intel, yeah. It's also we are welcoming that TSMC is also coming, because this means that we will have really the case that the semiconductor industry can really go into Germany and Europe as a whole, as a region, as a continent, and therefore we can just get the dependencies we're having from Asia at the moment away a little bit in the next couple of years. So we are talking about 2030 at the moment, as this is really long-term investment we are doing here.
Mr. Fretscher, is that industry policy as you like to see that in Europe, or is that a start of an expensive race also for subsidies in Europe?
I've always described these subsidies that, or help, let's not call it subsidy, but it's a subsidy to Intel and TSMC as a risky bet on the future. And it's a bet, right? I mean, if you simply look at it from a perspective of one company, you would say you never give 9 billion euros subsidy for relatively few, any jobs, but relatively few jobs.
Well, my colleagues, I have to cite that, my colleagues from the Zeit or the Wirtschaftswoche, I don't remember, but they said it's 3 million euros per job in that.
3,000 jobs, that's a calculation. But look, you know, the government selectively needs to take risks as well, right? So I think, in my view, the government cannot give subsidies to everyone. I think that's one of the mistakes the German government is doing now by subsidizing pretty much all of energy-intensive industry, saying, look, we don't give criteria, here it is. I see that very critically, but I understand and I agree that on certain priorities, the government needs to set priorities and put a bet. And so I think this is a bet that is justified, but whether it will pay off depends on whether this investment has a spillover, whether it will create additional jobs, mid-sized companies, whether Magdeburg will become a hub for other companies benefiting from that. And that's a bet, and the government needs to take that bet from time to time, but it needs to do so very selectively. And in my view, it's not doing it selectively enough. That's my main criticism about the industrial policy, trying to ensure the whole value chain of certain products is in Germany. And that is something that I see very detrimental, very expensive, and stifling innovation.
Sonia, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just want to comment because I really think, yeah, the government needs to have a decision and making bold decisions here, yeah. And like I was describing before, the semiconductor industry, and you were saying the oil is what powered us in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It will be chips in the future, or even now already, yeah. And we are at the moment not having this technology here or this industry at all, yeah. And I think bringing this back is a big battle for Europe, not only for Germany. So therefore, I think this is why we have to do it. And secondly, the bet you're just describing, Marcel, is we are investing obviously in jobs directly from an Intel perspective, but we also see that each job we are creating here will have another 6 to 10 jobs in the ecosystem, because we need the whole ecosystem also coming here into that, because only the production of chips will not satisfy. This is not what we want to do. We need the ecosystem around that for chip designs, for developing the chips and this kind of stuff. Then we really have the industry here. And then we can develop products, which we probably don't know what we will need in the future, coming with AI and other topics, blockchains, other topics, what is in the horizon. So this means we are defining an industry and therefore setting the basis for us for something which will come in the next couple of 10, 20 years.
The IT industry or chips industry is one important innovative industry. Pharmaceutical industry is another. Mr. Peters, what do you value about Germany as a location for innovation?
For innovation, and frankly, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry lives and dies by innovation. We are an innovation-led industry. You talk about the government making bets. Well, frankly, with the new Germany pharma strategy, we've put a statement in the sand and said that this is going to be a growth industry. And I'm really optimistic about it, provided we can take it and make it real and make it live. It's a sort of a truism. If you look at a couple of data sets, 25 years ago, when I joined MSD, half of all new treatments and innovations were coming out of Europe. Now it's less than 1 in 5. So we are dropping down some of those rankings. At the same time, when you look at what's happening in the academic sector, the high-end quality papers are all coming out of Germany. And we're punching above our weights here. So how do we, you talk about mindset. I fundamentally agree with you. How do we take that mindset? How do we transform what great skills we have here, what amazing people we have here, what technology we have here, and really drive it through? And I think, as I say, the pharma strategy is a great signal back to our companies like mine. And how do we lead in Europe? I think Germany needs to punch way above its weight.
Mm-hmm. So what else is it that you need then to become faster, or what this society needs to become faster and more innovative?
Maybe I'll just continue from some of the speeches today. I mean, you need to remove some of the bureaucracy. It's 4 things. One, you need to simplify. We need to make the system simpler. The second is we have to really recognize the value of innovation. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing that in the role that people are playing across Europe from Germany. I think the third thing is we have to look at our whole systems and think about what incentives or what disincentives exist in the system. And then the fourth, which is where we're very aligned, is how do we truly use digital and data to make the advances that we're seeing in so many different parts of the world?
You were talking about that before. I heard that, and I'm pretty sorry that you cannot have heard that. But now, Sonja, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add something on this, because we see that we have a lot of research and development here in the European area. So this means we have the Max Planck Institute here, we have the Fraunhofer here, yeah, we have in IMEC in Belgium, we have Leti in France. So there is a lot of research and development here. What is, from my perspective, something we need to foster a lot more is the entrepreneurship. Yeah, how do we get all these research ideas where we are very good at? Yeah, how do we get this really commercialized? Yeah, and really getting there this mindset again, which you were mentioning. How do we get this in? And there needs a culture of failure. Yeah, so not be brand marked if we failure one, that this means, oh shit, this is a CV which we cannot employ anymore. Yeah, so that's one topic, and it's also just make risks, yeah, make risks and go for bigger innovative decisions on your own as well as a company, and then collaborate with different companies to get really the best out of that. And when we are talking about collaboration, it should not be only in Germany. Yeah, we need to think, as you were saying as well, as European. Yeah, and this is something we have a lot of companies here as hidden champions in Germany, but we also find a lot in the European Union as well. And when we collaborate that together, then we are very strong.
Well, talking about mindset is a soft skill, and also depends on so many surroundings. I think we can all agree that times are tough and insecure these days. Is innovation under these circumstances that easy? Because it's always a very risky investment you take, and you cannot foresee the next year, the next war, the next whatever right now. What do you say to that?
Innovation is always risky, I mean, by definition. And seen from a positive perspective, the world is seeing transformations in so many areas, be it pharmaceuticals, AI, ecological transformation towards climate protection. And it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity that if you succeed in that area, there is a huge payoff. And we have enough companies that have managed. And maybe also taking, again, a European perspective, if you look at the biggest companies in Germany, the DAX 40 companies, the running joke is the youngest company is SAP, which is about 50 years old. If you go to the US and look at the 40 biggest companies, more than half is younger than 25, 30 years. And so I think we need to accept, and that's an uncomfortable fact, we call it creative destruction in economics. To make something new, to create a new structure, to have new ideas with new companies also implies that other companies, other ideas, existing things need to change and need to disappear. And at the moment, we try to have the cake and eat it. We try to protect the existing structure, guarantee all companies that are there, and at the same time create something new, and that will not work. So I think we need to have that mindset. There's a huge opportunity out there with a big payoff for innovation. So the returns to innovation, I think, are higher today than they were 20 or 40 years ago, because there's so many changes that also China needs. Medicine needs green technologies and other economies. So I would say let's focus on the opportunities, but we must accept that transformation means other paths have to disappear and change, and that's an uncomfortable truth. Mm.
Well, our politicians these days are telling the truth is not the easiest thing to do. There is no politician here now, but what kind of advice would you also as managers give to the German Chancellor of how to talk frankly about these things and still make people believe in innovation and tomorrow?
I think innovation is risky. You were just saying that, but the question is, do we have another choice? And this is probably not the case, yeah, because we see innovation is happening. We are not solid as European, yeah. So we are living in this world, and we are seeing the innovation coming from China, from the US, and we have a very big industry here in Germany and Europe, which is the automotive one, and we see how they are under pressure at the moment. From Asia, yeah. So this means the whole industry of automotive is becoming with Tesla in a complete different area. Yeah, we are talking here about software-defined vehicles. Yeah, this is a complete different transformation of how the industry will work in the future there. And for that, this also means Tesla was going in there and saying we have a computer. We just built some tires around, yeah, and some metal around, that's what we are also seeing from an Asia perspective, that we have brands now, automotive brands, which we even don't know, yeah, today. So this means innovation needs to come, otherwise this is also risky, yeah. So on the counterpart, we need to do the innovation. And AI will be probably something where we can do a lot more. We need to, we have a lot of planning what we are doing, but we also need to execute it to this area, and I think that could help us a lot going forward. And this is the kind of conversation I would like to have also with government, and we have, that we do need this transformation in our industries in total, yeah. And this is also where we are seeing that we are producing this leading edge chips in the future, which we will need in different industries, in healthcare as well as in automotive, as well as in different other areas. So, so therefore, this is where I see already this kind of conversations within the government is happening.
How do you see European companies positioned with regard to AI?
A very good question. So we have a lot of startups in this area. Also here in Europe, we have a program with Intel Ignite as well as with Liftoff, where we are helping startups in this AI area to really get investments and build their ideas into commercialized solutions so that they can really sell it. And this is a topic, and you were talking about funding on these areas. This is what we need. And Intel Ignite, for example, is really monitoring and helping the startups to get a network of investors, and at the end of the day, really commercialize their things. So this is what we are doing in a small area from an Intel perspective, and this needs much more from a European perspective going forward. And then I think we have a good play in AI, and we are seeing UK already very well positioned in the AI area as well. So I think things are happening from a Euro perspective, but we need to be faster.
Be faster and to get more money. Mr. Peters.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about AI, it's sort of interesting that it's taken till to the session this afternoon to talk about Gen AI. I mean, it's fundamentally transforming everywhere that we're looking at. If you look in the healthcare industry, how we identify targets, how we put together submission documents, how do we improve some of the clinical trial protocols and so forth, it's all happening in Gen AI, and it's scratching the surface. And just to your point about SMEs and so forth, we can't do this on our own. And I think that's the key message as well, is we have to collaborate. You know, MSD has been in Germany for 60 years, globally 130 years. We're not going anywhere. It's an important part of our footprint. We're very proud to be here. We want to do more. We do around 130 clinical trials in Germany every single year. We're involved in 600 different sites. However, we want to do more, and what's holding us back is some of the bureaucracy, some of the challenges around contracting and so on that you've heard through the day. Can we harness Gen AI to accelerate some of that? Can we think about how do we use the technologies to accelerate that? We want to invest more. We are an R&D-driven company. We invest more than we put in than virtually any other industry at this moment in time. It is a great place to be. But we just need to simplify, and we need those signals coming from government, of which I think we're starting to see some of those.
Talking about bureaucracy and AI, Europe just set a regulatory milestone with the AI Act, at least some experts say. Others are a bit more reluctant. Do you think, Sonja, this will trigger or hinder innovation in the field of AI?
So, you know, we need to have AI thinking about what this brings to us. From a German and European perspective, we are often think things through until the end. I think we cannot do that in AI, as we don't know what's coming and what kind of innovation we will see in the future. So therefore, being respectful with AI is something definitely we need to do. But on the other side, now already regulating everything is hindering us. So therefore, we need the way in between, and this is not in our culture. So therefore, I'm really trying to say that we need to focus on these areas, and from an Intel perspective, again, we are trying to democratize AI a lot, yeah? So doing things from an AI perspective where we see the data in the edge, we were talking about before about this, so really getting the information out of the data, where the data is coming from, will be very important in the future. And we will see in the manufacturing, and manufacturing is a big industry here in Germany as well as in Europe. So this means we do have this industry where we have a lot of data, and we need to convert this data into information. And we can do that where the data is coming from, and then we can use this data. And we were talking about that we are more or less wasting 80% of the data we are creating at the moment. So doing something with this data and really having then building services upon that will be something which is very, very important going forward. And this is what we, from an Intel perspective, are trying to achieve from an AI perspective.
Marcel also wanted to...
Maybe just to add to that, you talked about the attempt to regulate where we don't know how to regulate because the field is evolving so quickly. For me, there's another concern which relates to regulatory arbitrage. So Europe is very good in creating regulation that oftentimes is really good, is thought through. You think about data protection, consumer protection, about climate standards and so on. And as sensible as it is, the question is not what Europe does, but we often ignore what's happened globally. And for companies and for innovation, it's important where do you have the regulation that helps you best? And if Europe sets the highest standards, but innovation, because of that, happens elsewhere in the world, at the end of the day, everyone is playing with the lower rules, with the lower set of rules. And that's my concern, that we think too much nationally or European, but in regulation we really need to think about global standards. We need to find global standards jointly. Otherwise, those setting the higher standards are losing out and losing out on innovation and competition. Regulation
is important. You're absolutely right. But it's also something that you said right at the very beginning, which resonated extremely strongly. It's about the people. And if you've got the talent, I mean, I'll see that people will move companies, regional headquarters, to where the talent exists. And that's something we massively underestimate here in Germany. We have amazing people here. The science, the quality of the academia, research, etc. We have great people here. And I think sometimes we forget that, and we need to elevate that into the conversation. Regulations are important, but governments can only do so much. And I think what they can do is send signals. And some countries around the world have been extremely strong at which signals they send. And I think we can be even stronger in terms of the signals that we value innovation. We want to work and collaborate with industry, and ultimately we want to drive innovation as a leading opportunity in terms of financial and social benefits.
So regulation is no problem. That's
not quite sure we said that.
As long as the people are there and are as great as they are in Europe. But what signals do young researchers actually need to stay here, stay in Germany, stay in Europe, and not to go to America or China, India, or other faster countries?
Maybe I, as a scientist, if you allow, I start. But I think, as Kevin rightly said, in certain areas, Europe, Germany are highly innovative, really at the cutting edge where research is taking place. In other areas, we are not. And it is a combination. Probably the biggest and most important factor is networks. So where you have good people, where you have an innovative environment, people move to, and you have a cluster, and that's how researchers decide where to go and conduct their research. And the US is really great at attracting talent because it's open-minded. I talked about the third T, tolerance, appreciating diversity, appreciating being different, having different perspectives. I think that's where we need to become a lot more open, in particular in Germany, where that appreciation, in my view, is too small. And giving the environment, giving the room. I mean, one example, I remember it's 3-4 years ago, the German government very proudly announced we're going to spend 1 billion euros on AI. Over the next few years, and I thought, wow, fantastic. The next day, MIT came and said, we're going to spend $1.5 million on AI for the next couple of years. So one university doing more than a whole country. And that's kind of also a signal or an example where US universities, this research environment is just at a different scale of doing things and gives so many more opportunities. I don't want to make the European or German system worse than it is. I think it has great people, but I would want that we also, now talking about research and development, I think we need a lot stronger push also by the government to fund research and development, particularly those projects where you have spillovers, so not where companies privatize the subsidies, but where spillovers. You mentioned Max Planck, Helmholtz. If you allow, I would add Leibniz, as my institute is a Leibniz Institute. So I think we need to think in different categories, and that's where the US is very good. I think that's where China is great, and also others in Asia. We need to just appreciate more how important that is, and really invest in that.
Now we are talking about money. Instead of being the innovation champion, Germany often acts as the savings champion in Europe. Mr. Fratscher, rhetorical question. Can we go on the innovation offensive without new debt?
Wow. I mean, first of all, most investment is private, 90%. Most investment in R&D is private. And so I think the first step, and I mentioned that in the very beginning of our talk, is mobilizing capital savings that are already there. And Germany is the savings champion worldwide. I heard the term current account surplus earlier on. Germany is saving or producing each year 200 billion euros more than it spends. So it's exporting capital to the rest of the world in an order of magnitude of 200 billion euros. If it just used part of that money to invest in Europe in R&D. So this is mobilizing private capital, capital market union, banking union, single market is a first step. Now you're talking debt. Probably you're talking about government debt. From an economic point of view, you have good debt and bad debt. And good debt in Germany, gute Schulden, klingt terrible because Schulden is always, Schuld is guilt and it's always bad. But this is investment in R&D, in good infrastructure and education is the best investment you can make, not only for productivity, for innovation, but also financially, because in the long term it yields big rates of return also for the government.
Okay, thank you very much. So, before we need to come to an end, there is one question there are two questions from the audience, anonymous questions. I still are going to read them. Are digital innovation-related ambitions realistic? In a country that gravely lacks digital payment options, nur Barzahlung, do you know that term, Mr. Peters? Have you ever heard of that? Nur Barzahlung, when you can only pay cash. Probably yes. This doesn't exist in any country you used to live in, and those were many, but in Germany we still have that, nur Barzahlung. And that has one of the worst 4 or 5G coverage on the continent. Rhetorical question. Who wants to answer on that? Sonja, Marcel?
Go ahead.
Kevin would also go in there.
No, please. I lived in China for 3 years, and frankly, when WeChat went down, nobody could buy a Starbucks. You know, I mean, there is no cash in China. But you know, that's it's a great question. But frankly, let's broaden it to data. We are sitting on an awful lot of data. To your point, I just don't think we know how to ask the questions to mine that data. So, you know, that is one area where I would disagree with you know, some of the government standing on this. It's beyond signals. We can't just hope that data will generate all the benefits that we want. We are going to have to put some resource behind it. We are going to have to put some infrastructure behind it. But I also don't believe it's only with government. I think there's collaboration with industries and partners across the line. Yeah, every country I've lived in, I've got slightly nuanced, different uses of different apps. My phone is exploding with different apps, depending on which country you're in. There's some pushes and pulls. Yeah, I do. This is the only country I've carried cash for a while, I have to admit.
Okay. Do you want to answer too? Otherwise, I would call the next quick question. Transformation is fine, but would you agree that regulatory burdens regulate many innovations to death, like plant biotech, with brain drain as consequence? I guess we had that question. We have discussed that question already, and what I took from this discussion is, well, of course, regulation is a point, and you were stressing that we might not try to be the champion of regulation in the world, but come to the same level with our international partners, but that human capital is much more important. Did I get that right?
I think it's a nuance we may different. I mean, there are certain things that we need to get right. I mean, frankly, we are too complicated. We are too bureaucratic. Things like common contracting on clinical research is slowing us down. Those opportunities exist, and people want to seize them. There are opportunities to make data available that you can actually drive some of the digital transformation that we've talked about, especially in healthcare. My plea is that we do it in collaboration with private companies and so on. As you say, we invest heavily in Germany. We want to continue investing, and therefore there are opportunities to drive innovation. I don't think any one of us, any single stakeholder, owns innovation. It has to be a collaboration between all the different parts of the equation.
Thank you very much, Sonja.
Yeah, I really think the digitalization is something which we need to foster a lot more. And we need the business and the government working together on all the topics we're having in front of us. And I really think also from a business and company perspective, when we are looking into Aufsichtsräte, so when we are looking there, how the digital knowledge is in there, for example, this is not a lot. Yeah. So therefore, I think this new innovative thinking is what we need across the board, and that will be important. And yes, regulations are needed, but regulations should keep us competitive, like you're saying.
Thank you very much. I think next time we are discussing about schools and how to teach that to the next generation. This might be an interesting topic too. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for listening.